My brother laughed. Ha ha, we forgot to invite you. Have you ever been completely erased from your own family? Not physically, but emotionally, deliberately, like you never mattered at all? I stood there, phone in hand, staring at the wedding photos flooding my social media feed. My brother Marcus, my parents, my aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone I'd grown up with, everyone I'd loved, all dressed in their finest, celebrating what was apparently the wedding of the year. And I wasn't there. I wasn't even told it was happening. When I finally called him, my hands shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone, you know what he said? He laughed. Actually laughed. Ha ha ha, we forgot to invite you. Like I was some distant acquaintance. Like 28 years of being his sister meant absolutely nothing. If you've ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you most, hit that like button and subscribe. Because what I'm about to tell you is a story about family, betrayal, and the kind of revenge that doesn't come from anger. It comes from finally knowing your worth. Drop a comment if you've ever been the forgotten one, because I need you to know you're not alone, and this story is for us. But let me take you back to where it all started, because the wedding wasn't the beginning. It was just the moment everything finally broke. I grew up in Hartford, Connecticut, in one of those picture-perfect colonial houses with the white picket fence and the maple tree in the front yard. From the outside, we looked like the American dream. Dad was a successful litigation attorney. Mom was a real estate agent who somehow always managed to close the biggest deals in town while still making it to every PTA meeting. And then there was Marcus, 3 years younger than me, and from the moment he was born, the sun rose and set with him. I don't remember exactly when I realized I was invisible, but I remember the feeling. It creeps up on you slowly, like cold water rising around your ankles, then your knees, then your chest, until one day you're drowning and you don't even know how you got there. I was 11 when Marcus made the travel soccer team. Dad started coaching. Every weekend became about soccer tournaments. Every dinner conversation revolved around Marcus's goals, Marcus's assists, Marcus's college prospects. And he was only 8 years old. "Amber, can you clear the table?" Mom would say, barely glancing at me as Dad replayed Marcus's game highlights on his phone for the 3rd time. "Amber, keep it down upstairs. Your brother needs to rest before his game. Amber, we can't make your piano recital. Marcus has playoffs. I played piano for 6 years. They came to one recital. One. I told myself it was fine. I told myself Marcus was younger. He needed more attention. I told myself a lot of things that weren't true because the alternative, that my parents simply loved him more, was too painful to accept. High school was more of the same. I was a straight-A student, editor of the school newspaper, accepted into the National Honor Society. Marcus was a B- student who partied every weekend and got suspended twice for fighting. Guess whose achievements were celebrated? Marcus made varsity, Dad announced one night at dinner, beaming like Marcus had just won a Nobel Prize. "That's great," I said, pushing my food around my plate. "I got accepted into Yale's summer journalism program." Mom looked up briefly. "That's nice, honey. Did you ask them about financial aid? Those programs are expensive. That was it." That was the entire response to me getting into one of the most competitive high school programs in the country. But Marcus making varsity? Dad threw him a party. Literally invited half the neighborhood over for a barbecue to celebrate. I stopped trying so hard after that. Not completely. I still got good grades, still did my extracurriculars. But I stopped expecting them to care. I stopped telling them about my achievements because the disappointment of their indifference hurt worse than their absence. College was supposed to be my escape. I got into Northwestern University with a partial scholarship to study journalism. It wasn't Yale. I couldn't afford Yale, even with financial aid. But it was a top program, and I was proud of myself. My parents drove me to campus for move-in day. The whole drive, Mom was on the phone with Marcus, who was starting his junior year of high school. "Make sure you're eating enough. Don't stay up too late. Remember your curfew," I wanted to scream. I was literally leaving home for the first time, moving 800 miles away, and she was more concerned about Marcus's curfew. When we got to my dorm, they helped me carry my stuff up to my room. Well, Dad carried the heavy boxes while Mom supervised and continued texting Marcus. We spent maybe 45 minutes getting me settled before Dad checked his watch. "We should hit the road," he said. "Want to beat the traffic?" That was it. No tears, no long goodbye, no "we're so proud of you" speech. Mom hugged me quickly, told me to call if I needed anything, and they were gone. I sat on my bare mattress in my empty dorm room and cried for 2 hours. But college became my salvation. For the first time in my life, I was judged on my own merits. My professors didn't have a favorite younger child to compare me to. My friends chose to spend time with me because they actually liked me, not because we shared DNA. I thrived. I became a staff writer for the campus newspaper my freshman year, assistant editor by sophomore year. I interned at the Chicago Tribune the summer after my junior year. I made Dean's List every semester. I had friends who actually showed up for me. I had professors who wrote me glowing recommendation letters. I had a life that was mine. I called home less and less. At first, I told myself I was just busy. But the truth was, every time I talked to my parents, I felt that old familiar ache, the one that reminded me I would never be enough for them. They called me occasionally, usually to ask me to talk to Marcus about something. "He's not doing well in school. Maybe you could give him some study tips. He's thinking about colleges. Can you tell him about the application process?" I was a resource, a tool they could use when Marcus needed help. But I was never their daughter. Not really. After graduation, I moved to Boston. I got a job at a local news station as a junior producer. The pay was terrible and the hours were brutal, but I loved it. I was telling stories that mattered. I was making a difference. Marcus went to University of Connecticut, barely got in from what I heard through the family grapevine, and majored in business because he didn't know what else to do. He graduated with a 2.7 GPA and moved back home. And you know what happened? Dad got him a job at one of his friend's companies, some mid-level management position that Marcus was completely unqualified for. He was making $60,000 a year straight out of college while I was scraping by on $35,000 and eating ramen for dinner 4 nights a week. But I wasn't bitter. I was free. I was building my own life, my own identity, my own success. I didn't need their approval anymore, or at least that's what I told myself. The distance between us grew. I came home for Christmas and Thanksgiving, stayed for a few days, played my role as the dutiful daughter, then left again. My parents never visited me in Boston. Not once in 3 years. They said they were too busy. They said Boston was so far. They said a lot of things that all meant the same thing. I wasn't a priority. Marcus and I barely spoke. We were polite when we saw each other at holidays, but that was it. We didn't text. We didn't call. We existed in completely separate orbits. Then, about 2 years ago, I got a brief text from him. "Started seeing someone serious. You'd like her." That was it. No details. No invitation to meet her. Just that one sentence. I texted back. "That's great. I'm happy for you." He never responded. I heard about her through Mom over the phone. Her name was Victoria. She came from a wealthy family in Greenwich. Her father owned a chain of luxury car dealerships. She worked in marketing but didn't really need to work because her family had money, the kind of money that meant never worrying about rent or student loans or whether you could afford groceries that week. "She's lovely," Mom gushed. "So sophisticated. And her family is so accomplished. They have a house in the Hamptons." I felt that old familiar ache, but I pushed it down. I was happy for Marcus. I really was. If he'd found someone he loved, good for him. Over the next year, I heard bits and pieces about Victoria. They moved in together. Her parents loved Marcus. They went on vacation to Italy. Dad and Mom had dinner with Victoria's parents, and apparently everyone got along wonderfully. I still hadn't met her. Not that anyone had invited me to. I was busy anyway. I'd gotten promoted to associate producer. I was working on an investigative series about housing discrimination in Boston that would eventually win a local Emmy. My life was full and meaningful, but there was still this small part of me. This stupid, childish part of me that hoped maybe, just maybe, my family would see me, would recognize what I'd accomplished, would be proud of me. That part of me was an idiot. Last April, I got a text from Mom. Marcus and Victoria are engaged. So exciting. I called her immediately. That's wonderful. When did it happen? Last night. He took her to some fancy restaurant and proposed. It was very romantic. I'm so happy for him, I said, meaning it. When's the wedding? Oh, they're thinking October. Victoria wants a fall wedding. That sounds beautiful. Let me know when you have more details. Of course, honey. October. That gave me 6 months to plan, to save up for a nice gift, to prepare myself for whatever role I'd play in my brother's wedding. I figured I'd be invited to the bridal shower at least, maybe even asked to do a reading at the ceremony. I was so naive. The months passed. I heard nothing. No save the date. No invitation. No phone call asking me to be involved in any way. I told myself they were just busy planning. Weddings are stressful. They'd reach out when they finalized details. In August, I called Mom. Hey, I was wondering if you needed help with anything for Marcus's wedding. I'm happy to help however I can. There was a pause. Oh, that's sweet, honey. But Victoria's family is handling most of it. They've hired a wedding planner? Everything's under control. Okay, but I'd still love to help. I could organize the bridal shower or Victoria's sorority sisters are doing that. But thank you for offering. I felt a knot forming in my stomach. Mom, I haven't gotten an invitation yet. When should I expect that? Another pause. Longer this time. You know, honey, it's a pretty small wedding. Intimate. Victoria wanted to keep it close family and friends. Close family. I was his sister. His only sister. How was I not close family? Mom, I am close family. I'm his sister. I know, honey. I know. Let me talk to Marcus about it, okay? She never called me back. September came and went. I heard nothing. I told myself I was overreacting. Maybe the invitation got lost in the mail. Maybe they were sending them out late. Maybe there was some explanation that made sense. But deep down I knew. I knew I wasn't invited. I knew they'd cut me out deliberately. I just didn't want to believe my own family could do that to me. Then came October 7th, a Saturday. I was at home working on editing a segment for Monday's broadcast when my phone started buzzing. Instagram notifications, Facebook notifications, text from an old high school friend. Your brother's wedding looks amazing. Sorry I couldn't make it. My blood went cold. I opened Instagram, and there it was. Photo after photo after photo. Marcus in a tailored navy suit, looking happier than I'd ever seen him. Victoria in a stunning lace gown, looking like she'd stepped out of a bridal magazine. My parents dressed to the nines, beaming with pride, my Aunt Carol, my Uncle Jim, my cousins, family friends, Marcus's friends, Victoria's sorority sisters. What looked like at least 150 people at some gorgeous venue with string lights and a waterfront view. Everyone was there. Everyone except me. I scrolled through the photos with shaking hands. There was Dad giving a toast, his arm around Marcus. There was Mom crying happy tears. There was Marcus's best friend from college giving what looked like a hilarious speech based on everyone's laughter. I wasn't in a single photo. Not one, because I wasn't there. Because I wasn't invited. Because to them, I didn't exist. I sat there on my couch, staring at my phone, feeling like someone had reached into my chest and ripped out my heart. This wasn't an oversight. You don't forget to invite your daughter, your sister, to a wedding. You don't accidentally leave someone off a 150-person guest list. This was deliberate. This was a choice. They chose to exclude me. I called Marcus. My hands were shaking so hard I almost couldn't dial. It rang 4 times before he picked up. Hello? He sounded breathless, happy. I could hear music and laughter in the background. Marcus, it's me. It's Amber. Oh, hey. What's up? What's up? What's up? I'm seeing photos of your wedding online. There was a pause. The background noise faded. He must have stepped away from the reception. Oh, yeah. It was a great ceremony. Victoria looked amazing. Why wasn't I invited? Another pause. Then I heard it, a laugh. A short, awkward, dismissive laugh. Ha ha ha, we forgot to invite you. Those words. Those 6 words that would change everything. We forgot to invite you. Not, I'm so sorry. Not, it was a mistake. Not even a real explanation. Just, we forgot. You forgot, I repeated, my voice hollow. You forgot to invite your sister to your wedding. Yeah, man, it was just a crazy planning process. Victoria's mom was handling the guest list and things got hectic, and you know how it is. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. My exclusion from my own brother's wedding, from one of the most important days of his life, was not a big deal. Marcus, there were over 100 people there. I saw the photos. You forgot me, but you remembered to invite the neighbors from 3 houses down that we barely talked to growing up? Look, Amber, I don't know what to tell you. It happened. I'm at my reception. Can we talk about this later? No, we can't talk about this later. You deliberately excluded me. Admit it. Jesus, Amber. Why do you always have to make everything about you? It's my wedding day. Can't you just be happy for me? I couldn't breathe. I literally couldn't breathe. Make everything about me? Make everything about me? You've made everything about you for our entire lives. Everything has always been about Marcus. And the one time I ask why I was left out of something important, you tell me I'm making it about me? You're being dramatic. I'm being dramatic? I'm your sister, Marcus. Your only sister. And you didn't even care enough to make sure I was invited to your wedding. Whatever. Amber, I really don't have time for this right now. And he hung up. He actually hung up on me. I sat there in my apartment, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone, and something inside me broke. Not in a sad way. Not in a defeated way. In a clarifying way, they didn't forget. Nobody forgets their daughter, their sister, when creating a wedding guest list. They made a conscious choice to exclude me, and then they couldn't even respect me enough to be honest about it. We forgot. That was the lie they were going with. That was how little they thought of me. They couldn't even come up with a better excuse. I looked around my apartment. At the degrees on my wall. At the Emmy certificate from my investigative series. At the photos of me with friends who actually showed up for me, who actually cared about me. At the life I'd built entirely on my own, with no help from them, no support from them, no recognition from them. And I realized something. I'd spent my entire life trying to earn their love. Trying to be good enough, trying to be seen. And it was never going to happen. I could cure cancer, and they'd still find a way to make Marcus's hangnail the bigger story. I was done. I was done begging for scraps of affection from people who had made it abundantly clear that I didn't matter to them. I was done making excuses for their behavior. I was done pretending this was a normal family dynamic. But more than that, I was done being invisible. They thought they could erase me. They thought they could exclude me and face no consequences. They thought I'd just accept this, swallow my pain, and continue playing the role of the forgotten daughter. They had no idea who I'd become. They had no idea what I was capable of. They had no idea how much they were going to regret treating me like I didn't exist, because I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cause a scene. I wasn't going to beg them to love me. I was going to show them exactly what they'd lost when they decided I wasn't worth a seat at my own brother's wedding. I was going to make them see me. And by the time I was done, they were going to wish they'd never made me invisible in the first place. But I had to be smart about this, strategic, patient. So I started planning. The morning after the wedding, I woke up with perfect clarity. No tears, no desperate calls to my parents begging for an explanation. No self-pity, just cold, crystalline focus. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and started doing what I do best. Research. See, my family never paid attention to my career. They never asked about my work. They had no idea that over the past 5 years, I'd become an investigative producer who knew how to dig up information, verify sources, and piece together stories that people tried to hide. I'd exposed corrupt landlords, fraudulent businesses, and dirty politicians. I knew how to find the truth, And now I was going to find out everything about my perfect brother and his perfect new wife. I started with the basics: social media deep dives, LinkedIn profiles, public records. I wasn't looking for anything specific, I was just looking. When you dig deep enough, everyone has secrets. Everyone has something they don't want exposed. Victoria's Instagram was a carefully curated highlight reel. Luxury vacations, designer clothes, brunch at expensive restaurants. Her bio read, Marketing Director, Luxe Lifestyle Agency, Champagne Taste on a Champagne Budget, Marketing Director. I clicked through to the company website. Luxe Lifestyle Agency was a boutique marketing firm that specialized in luxury brands. According to LinkedIn, Victoria had been there for 3 years, promoted to director after just 18 months. Fast promotion for someone so young. I made a note. I dug into the company itself. Small team, maybe 15 employees, founded 6 years ago. And here's where it got interesting. The founder and CEO was listed as Richard Chen. But when I cross-referenced business filings, I found that Victoria's father, James Hartford, was a majority investor. So Victoria's impressive career was at a company her daddy bankrolled. She wasn't a self-made marketing director. She was playing pretend at a company that existed partially because of her family money. Not illegal. Not even that unusual among wealthy families. But definitely not the impressive career success story my parents had been gushing about. I kept digging. Marcus was harder to research because he barely existed online. No Instagram. A Facebook he hadn't updated in 2 years. A LinkedIn that listed his job as regional manager at Hartford Automotive Group. Wait. Hartford Automotive Group. Victoria's family business. I pulled up the company website. Sure enough, James Hartford was the owner. They had 12 dealership locations across Connecticut and New York, specializing in luxury vehicles: Mercedes, BMW, Audi, Porsche. So Marcus wasn't working at one of Dad's friends' companies anymore. He was working for his father-in-law, at a company where he'd undoubtedly gotten his position through marriage connections rather than qualifications. My brother, who could barely graduate college, who had no real work experience, who had coasted through life on charm and our parents' favoritism, was now regional manager at a luxury car dealership empire because he married the boss's daughter. I sat back and laughed. Actually laughed out loud in my empty apartment. This was too perfect. My entire life, my parents had held Marcus up as the golden child. The successful one. The one with the bright future. And the whole thing was built on connections, nepotism, and marrying into money. There was no actual achievement there. No real success. Just privilege stacked on top of privilege. Meanwhile, I'd built my career from nothing. Every opportunity I'd gotten, I'd earned. Every promotion was based on merit. Every award I'd won was because I'd worked my ass off. But none of that mattered to them, because Marcus had married rich. Over the next few weeks, I watched from a distance. I didn't call my parents. I didn't reach out to Marcus. I didn't explain why I'd gone silent. I just disappeared from their lives the same way they'd erased me from that wedding. Mom called twice in the first week. I didn't answer. She left voicemails. Hi, honey, just checking in. Call me back when you get a chance. Then, Amber, I haven't heard from you. Is everything okay? Call me. I deleted both without responding. Dad sent one text. Your mother is worried. Please call. I archived it. Marcus never reached out at all. Not surprising. I knew what they were thinking. They thought I was being dramatic. They thought I'd cool off and come crawling back, ready to accept my place as the forgotten daughter who should just be grateful to be included when they remembered I existed. They were wrong. I threw myself into my work. I was in the middle of producing a series on educational inequality in Boston public schools, and it was consuming. 16-hour days, interviews with teachers, students, administrators, data analysis, B-roll shoots, script revisions. It was exactly what I needed. Work had always been my refuge, the place where I mattered, where my contributions were valued. My boss, Patricia, was a 55-year-old former investigative reporter who'd mentored me since I started at the station. She'd won 2 Emmys and a Peabody Award in her career. She was brilliant, demanding, and one of the few people who actually saw me for who I was. One afternoon in late October, she called me into her office. "Close the door," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. I sat, wondering if I'd screwed something up. "The education series is excellent," she said. "Some of your best work. Thank you. But you look like hell. When's the last time you slept more than 4 hours?" I shrugged. "I'm fine. Just focused." Patricia leaned back in her chair, studying me with those sharp journalist eyes that missed nothing. "What's going on, Amber? And don't tell me nothing. I've known you for 4 years. Something's different." For a moment, I considered lying. But Patricia had always been straight with me. She deserved the same respect. "My brother got married a few weeks ago," I said quietly. "I wasn't invited. They forgot to put me on the guest list. Or at least, that's what he told me when I called him during his reception after seeing the photos online." Patricia's expression darkened. "They forgot. That's what he said. And your parents?" "Haven't really talked to them since." She was quiet for a moment, then said something I didn't expect. "Good." I blinked. "Good? Good that you're not talking to them. Family that treats you like you're disposable doesn't deserve access to you." She paused. "You know what the hardest thing about being a woman in this industry is? It's not the sexism or the long hours or the crap pay when you're starting out. It's unlearning the idea that you have to accept being treated poorly by people just because they're family." "I'm not sure I'm ready to cut them off completely," I admitted. "I'm not saying you have to. But I am saying you need to stop setting yourself on fire to keep them warm. You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to walk away. And you're sure as hell allowed to make them work for your forgiveness. If you decide to forgive them at all." Something about her words unlocked something in me. Permission. I hadn't realized how much I needed someone to tell me that my anger was justified, that I didn't have to be the bigger person, that I was allowed to protect myself. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick. "Now go home and sleep. That's an order. The series can wait until you've had 8 hours." November arrived. Thanksgiving was 3 weeks away. I knew the phone calls would start soon. The expectation that I'd come home, play nice, pretend everything was fine. I wasn't going. For the first time in my life, I was going to skip a family holiday, and I felt free. Lighter than I'd felt in years. I made plans with my friend Jenna, a fellow producer at the station who also had a complicated relationship with her family. We decided to do Friendsgiving, just the 2 of us, cooking an obscene amount of food, drinking wine, and watching bad movies. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, Mom called. This time I answered, "Amber, finally! I've been so worried about you. I've been busy with work." "Too busy to call your mother back for a month." Apparently. There was a pause. I could hear the confusion in her silence. I'd never been sharp with her before. I'd always been the accommodating one, the peacekeeper. "Well," she said, recovering, "I'm calling about Thanksgiving. I need to know if you're coming so I can plan the menu. Are you bringing anyone this year?" "I'm not coming." Another pause. Longer this time. "What do you mean you're not coming?" "I mean I'm not coming home for Thanksgiving. I have other plans." "Amber, don't be ridiculous. It's Thanksgiving. You can't just not come home." "Actually, I can. And I am." "Is this about the wedding?" Her voice had shifted from confused to annoyed. "Are you really going to miss Thanksgiving because you're upset about not being invited to Marcus's wedding?" The way she said it, like I was being childish, like my feelings were an inconvenience, made my blood boil. "Mom, let me make sure I understand. You think the problem is that I'm upset about missing the wedding? Not that you all deliberately excluded me and then lied about it? We didn't deliberately— Yes, you did. You don't forget to invite someone to a wedding. You don't accidentally leave your daughter off a guest list. You made a choice and now I'm making one too. I'm not coming home for Thanksgiving. Your father is going to be very disappointed. My father hasn't called me once since the wedding. He sent one text telling me you were worried. Not that he was worried. That you were. So I don't think he'll be that disappointed. Amber Marie, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this attitude is unacceptable. Amber Marie. She was pulling out the full name, like I was a child being scolded. What's unacceptable is excluding your daughter from her brother's wedding and then acting like she's the problem for being heard about it. What's unacceptable is calling me only when you need something, or when you're annoyed that I'm not falling in line. What's unacceptable is 28 years of making me feel like I don't matter. That's not fair. Name one of my accomplishments, Mom, right now. Name one thing I've achieved in the last 5 years without looking it up. Silence. You can't, can you? But you can tell me all about Marcus's soccer stats from high school. You can tell me about Victoria's family's house in the Hamptons. You can tell me every detail of a wedding I wasn't invited to. But you can't name a single thing your daughter has accomplished. You work at a news station? I'm an associate producer. I won an Emmy last year for an investigative series on housing discrimination. I've been promoted 3 times. I've broken stories that actually mattered, that actually helped people. But you wouldn't know any of that because you never asked. You never cared. Amber, that's not true. We're very proud of you. Stop, just stop. We both know that's not true. And I'm done pretending it is. I'm not coming home for Thanksgiving. Don't call me again unless you're ready to have an honest conversation about why I was excluded from Marcus's wedding and why you've treated me like an afterthought my entire life. I hung up. Before she could respond, my hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. But I felt incredible, powerful, like I'd finally said all the things I'd been swallowing for years. She didn't call back. Thanksgiving came and went. Jenna and I made a turkey that was slightly overdone, mashed potatoes that were perfect, and pumpkin pie from scratch. We drank too much wine and watched The Princess Bride and When Harry Met Sally and laughed until our stomachs hurt. It was the best Thanksgiving I'd ever had. I saw the photos on social media. Of course, Marcus and Victoria at my parents' house, everyone smiling, my uncle carving the turkey, the perfectly set table, the caption from Mom's Facebook, thankful for family. I didn't comment. I didn't react. I just noted that once again, they seemed to be doing perfectly fine without me. Good. That made what came next easier. December brought the first snow and something else. An opportunity. Patricia called me into her office again. How would you feel about being lead producer on a new investigative series? About what? We're doing a deep dive into nepotism and privilege in Connecticut's business sector. Looking at how family connections and wealth create opportunities that aren't available to everyone else, and how that perpetuates inequality. We want to profile several families and businesses, show the human impact. My pulse quickened. That sounds interesting. I thought you'd think so. We've already identified a few targets. There's a construction company in Stamford where the owner's 3 sons all hold executive positions despite having no experience. A law firm in New Haven that only hires from one elite private school. And there's a luxury car dealership group, Hartford Automotive, where the owner's new son-in-law just became regional manager. I kept my face neutral, but inside my heart was racing. Hartford Automotive? Yeah, we got a tip from a former employee that there's some shady stuff going on. Discriminatory hiring practices, possible financial irregularities. Nothing concrete yet, but worth looking into. She paused. Why, you know them? This was it. The universe handing me the perfect opportunity. I could back away, claim conflict of interest, let someone else investigate my brother's company. Or I could lean in. My brother works there, I said carefully. He married the owner's daughter. Patricia's eyebrows rose. The same brother who forgot to invite you to his wedding? The same one. She studied me for a long moment. You understand this would need to be completely by the book. No personal vendettas. No cutting corners. If we find something, great. If we don't, we move on. Can you handle that? Could I handle objectively investigating my brother's company? Exposing any wrongdoing I found? Potentially destroying his perfect new life the same way he'd casually destroyed my family relationship? Yes, I said. I can handle that. Then it's yours. Start with the former employee tip. See where it leads. The former employee's name was David Chen. He'd Worked at Hartford Automotive as a sales associate for 3 years before being fired 6 months ago, right? Around the time Marcus started working there, reached out through LinkedIn, identifying myself as a producer working on a story about employment practices in Connecticut. I didn't mention Marcus or Victoria. Not yet. David agreed to meet at a coffee shop in Norwalk, halfway between his new job and his old one. He was 32, Asian American, dressed in a button-down and slacks. He looked tired. "Thanks for meeting with me," I said as we sat down with our coffees. "Thanks for reaching out. I wasn't sure anyone would care about what happened. Tell me your story." "Start from the beginning." He took a sip of coffee, gathering his thoughts. "I started at Hartford Automotive in 2019. I was good at my job, really good. My first year, I was top salesperson at my location. Second year, same thing. Third year, I was on track to break company records. So what happened? Management changed. James Hartford, the owner, he's mostly hands-off, right? He's got general managers running each location. But about a year ago, he started getting more involved. Started bringing his daughter around. She didn't work there, but she was always at company events, getting introduced to everyone. Victoria Hartford. Right. And then she got engaged to this guy, Marcus. I don't remember his last name. White guy, athletic looking, kind of cocky. I didn't flinch. What happened after she got engaged? Suddenly, Marcus is working at the company. Not as a salesperson, as a regional manager. Which means he's managing multiple locations, including mine. And this guy knows nothing about car sales. Nothing. He's asking basic questions, making stupid decisions, but everyone's kissing his ass because he's married to the boss's daughter. Did his presence affect your work? David's jaw tightened. I went from top performer to being written up for stupid shit. Suddenly, my sales techniques were too aggressive. My customer follow-up was inconsistent. All these complaints that had never been issues before. Did you ask why? I asked my GM. He said Marcus wanted to raise standards across all locations. But it was bullshit. I watched white salespeople do the exact same things I was doing. Hell, worse things. And they never got written up. It was just me and 2 other guys, both minorities. Did you file a complaint? I tried. HR basically told me to deal with it. Said I needed to adjust my approach to Marcus's management style. 2 months later, I was fired for performance issues. Do you have documentation? I have everything. Every write-up, every email, my sales numbers, comparisons to other employees. I was building a case for a discrimination lawsuit, but my lawyer said it would be hard to prove without other witnesses, and everyone still working there is too scared to say anything. This was exactly what I needed, but I had to be careful. David, I need to ask you something. Are you willing to go on record? To be interviewed on camera? He hesitated. Will that help? It could. If we can corroborate your story, if we can show a pattern of discriminatory behavior, it could lead to a real investigation. But I won't lie. It might also mean people coming after you, questioning your credibility. I don't care anymore. I lost my job because some rich kid married the boss's daughter and decided he didn't like having minorities make him look bad. If I can stop it from happening to someone else, I'll do it. Over the next 3 weeks, I worked the story harder than I'd ever worked anything in my life. I interviewed 8 other former Hartford Automotive employees. 6 of them told similar stories, hired during periods of high turnover, performed well, then suddenly found themselves targeted with write-ups and complaints after Marcus took his regional manager position. The pattern was clear. Marcus was pushing out experienced, successful employees, particularly minorities, and replacing them with people who fit a certain image. Young, white, conventionally attractive salespeople who'd work for lower commissions and not question his authority. I pulled public records. In the 18 months since Marcus became regional manager, employee turnover at the locations he managed had increased by 40%. The workforce had become noticeably less diverse. I reviewed customer complaints. There'd been a significant increase in complaints about aggressive sales tactics and bait-and-switch pricing, classic signs of inexperienced, poorly trained sales teams. I looked into Marcus's qualifications. He had no sales experience before joining Hartford Automotive. His business degree from UConn was in general management. He'd spent 2 years at his previous job, a mid-level position at a software company, before getting fired for performance issues. I verified this with a former coworker who was willing to talk off the record. My perfect brother, the golden child, the one my parents were so proud of, was a failed employee who'd married into a company he was now running into the ground through incompetence and possible discrimination, and I had it all documented. Christmas was 2 weeks away when I compiled everything into a story pitch for Patricia. I laid out the evidence, the testimony from former employees, the turnover data, the decline in customer satisfaction, Marcus's lack of qualifications, the timing of everything coinciding with his marriage to Victoria. Patricia read through it carefully. When she finished, she looked at me. "This is solid work, Amber. Really solid. But I need to ask again. Are you sure you want to do this? This is your brother. If we air this story, it's going to destroy him. It's going to destroy your family relationship." "There is no family relationship," I said quietly. "They made that clear when they erased me from the wedding. Besides, this isn't about revenge. This is about holding people accountable. If Marcus wasn't my brother, if he was just some random regional manager discriminating against employees and running a business poorly, we'd run this story without hesitation, right? We would, then we run it. The fact that he's my brother doesn't make what he's doing okay? If anything, it makes it more important that someone stop him." Patricia nodded slowly. "Okay, but we do this right. We give Hartford Automotive a chance to respond. We double-check every fact. We make sure this is bulletproof. I wouldn't have it any other way." We sent an official request for comment to Hartford Automotive in mid-December. We outlined our findings and gave them 1 week to respond. 3 days later, my phone rang. It was my father. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he said without preamble, so they'd gotten the request. "Good. I'm doing my job, Dad." "Your job? You're attacking your brother! You're trying to ruin his career because you're petty and jealous. I'm investigating credible allegations of discrimination and mismanagement. The fact that Marcus is involved is incidental." "Incidental? Amber, this is your family." "Family?" I laughed bitterly. "You mean the family that forgot to invite me to Marcus's wedding? That family? We've apologized for that." "No, you haven't. Not once. Mom tried to tell me I was being dramatic." Marcus laughed about it. "You sent one text. Nobody has actually apologized or taken responsibility because you've been unreachable. You didn't come home for Thanksgiving. You haven't returned our calls. I came home for 28 years. Dad. I showed up for every holiday, every family dinner, every event I was actually told about. I was there. I was always there. And you never saw me. You never made me feel like I mattered. So excuse me if I'm not rushing to protect the brother who laughed when I asked why I wasn't invited to his wedding. If you run this story, Amber, there will be consequences." The threat in his voice was unmistakable. This was lawyer Dad now, not father Dad. "Consequences like what? You'll cut me off? You'll stop inviting me to family events? Been there, done that. You can't threaten me with losing something I never had. You'll regret this. The only thing I regret is spending so many years trying to earn love from people who were never going to give it to me. Run this by Marcus. If there's nothing wrong happening at Hartford Automotive, he has nothing to worry about. But if he's been doing what 8 former employees say he's been doing, then he should be worried." I hung up. My hands were shaking again, but not from fear. From adrenaline. From power. From finally standing up for myself. Let them panic. Let them scramble. Let them feel what it's like when someone they underestimated shows them exactly what they're capable of. The story was scheduled to air the first week of January. We'd given Hartford Automotive every opportunity to respond. They'd sent a generic statement denying any wrongdoing and claiming they valued diversity and employee satisfaction. They'd refused to make anyone available for an on-camera interview. We had everything we needed. The segment was going to be 12 minutes, a huge amount of time in local news. Patricia had fought for it because the story was that strong. We had the former employees on camera. We had the data. We had documentation. We had everything. I spent Christmas alone in my apartment, eating Chinese takeout and working on final edits. My phone was silent. No calls from my parents. No texts from Marcus. They'd gone from love-bombing me to complete silence. Fine with me. On New Year's Eve, I got a text from an unknown number. "This is Victoria Hartford. We need to talk." I stared at the message for a long moment. I'd never met my brother's wife. She'd never reached out before. And now suddenly she wanted to talk? I typed back, "About what?" "About the story you're about to air. I think there's been a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding. That's what she was going with. There's no misunderstanding. We've thoroughly researched everything, please. Just meet me for coffee, one conversation. If you still want to air the story after, fine. But give me a chance to explain. Part of me wanted to say no. To tell her that her husband should have thought about consequences before he discriminated against employees. To point out that Marcus never gave me a chance to talk before excluding me from his wedding. But the journalist in me was curious. What could she possibly say? What explanation could there be? "Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Blue Bottle Coffee in Hartford. 1 hour, thank you. I'll be there." I walked into Blue Bottle at 1:55 p.m. on New Year's Day. Victoria was already there, sitting at a corner table, wearing an expensive cashmere sweater and jeans that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. She looked up when I walked in, and I saw the recognition in her eyes. She knew who I was from the photos she'd seen, the photos from a wedding I hadn't been invited to. "Amber," she said, standing up. She extended her hand. "I'm Victoria. Thank you for meeting me." I shook her hand briefly and sat down. "You have 1 hour, talk." She took a breath. "First, I want to say I'm sorry. About the wedding. I had no idea you weren't invited until after it happened. You had no idea your fiancé didn't invite his only sister to your wedding? I left the guest list to Marcus and the wedding planner. I assumed he'd invited you. When I found out later that you weren't there, I asked him about it and he said you'd declined. I didn't know he'd lied until your father called last week about the news story." I studied her face, trying to gauge if she was telling the truth. "Why didn't you reach out then? When you found out I'd been excluded?" "I wanted to. But Marcus said you two had a complicated relationship, that you'd probably prefer if I stayed out of it." "I was trying to respect that." She paused. "I should have pushed harder. I should have insisted on talking to you myself." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I don't want you to air that story thinking I'm part of whatever Marcus did wrong. Because I work at my family's company too, and I need you to know that I had nothing to do with the firing decisions or the discrimination complaints." "But you knew about them." She hesitated. "I knew there were complaints. I didn't know the details until this week when your news station sent the request for comment. So you just ignored red flags at your family's business? I trusted that HR was handling things appropriately." "I was wrong." I leaned back in my chair. "Victoria, let me be very clear. This story is running. We have 8 former employees on record. We have documentation. We have data showing increased turnover and decreased diversity since Marcus became regional manager. Whether you were involved or not doesn't change the facts. I know. And I'm not asking you to kill the story. I'm asking you to let me fix this first. Let me do an internal investigation. Let me document what actually happened and take action. Give me 3 months. 3 months? No, this airs next week. Amber, please. If you air this story now, it destroys everything. My family's business, Marcus's career, my father's reputation. But if you give me time to investigate internally and implement changes, we can make this right. Fire the people who need to be fired. Implement proper oversight. Hire back the employees who were wrongfully terminated. Actually fix the problem instead of just exposing it. Why would I wait? Why would I give you the chance to cover everything up? I'm not going to cover it up. I'm going to document everything and share it with you. Full transparency. You'll have access to everything. And in 3 months, you can air an even better story. Not just about what went wrong, but about how we fixed it. Accountability plus action. I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell her that Marcus didn't deserve 3 months. didn't deserve the chance to fix his mistakes before facing consequences. But the journalist in me saw her point. A story about a company actually taking responsibility and fixing discriminatory practices was more impactful than just an exposé. I need to think about it, I said. That's all I'm asking. She slid a business card across the table. That's my personal cell. Call me anytime. And Amber? I really am sorry. About the wedding. About everything. You deserved better. She left money on the table for both our coffees and walked out. I sat there for a long time, staring at her business card, wondering if I was about to make a huge mistake. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my couch with Victoria's business card on the coffee table, staring at it like it might explode. Every instinct told me not to trust her. She was Marcus's wife. She was part of the family that had excluded me. Why would she suddenly care about doing the right thing now that their reputation was on the line? But there was something in her eyes during that meeting. Something genuine. Or maybe I just wanted to believe that not everyone in this situation was completely heartless. At 2 a.m., I called Patricia. She answered on the third ring, voice groggy. This better be life or death, Amber. Victoria Hartford wants 3 months to do an internal investigation before we air the story. She's promising full transparency and documentation of all corrective actions. Patricia was silent for a moment. I heard rustling. She was sitting up. What do you think? I think it could be a better story. Accountability plus action is more impactful than just exposure. But I also think she might be buying time to destroy evidence or cover tracks. What's your gut telling you? My gut. The thing I'd learned to trust over 4 years of investigative journalism. My gut says she's genuinely shocked by what Marcus did, and she's trying to protect her family's legacy. But that doesn't mean I should trust her completely. So what do you want to do? I want to give her 1 month, not 3. And I want weekly check-ins with full documentation. If she misses a single deadline or if I smell any kind of cover-up, we air immediately with what we have, plus the fact that they tried to bury it. 1 month I can sell to the executive producer. But Amber, you need to be prepared for the possibility that your family will hate you no matter what happens. Even if Victoria follows through, even if they make changes, you're still the person who threatened to expose them. They already hate me, Patricia. Or at least they don't love me enough for it to matter. What's the difference? She sighed. All right, 1 month. But you document everything. Every conversation, every piece of evidence, every promise she makes. We're building 2 stories now. The original exposé and the follow-up about whether they actually fixed anything. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just don't let them play you. The next morning, I texted Victoria. 1 month. Weekly documentation of your investigation and all corrective actions. Miss 1 deadline and we air immediately. Meet me tomorrow with your plan. She responded within minutes. Thank you. I won't let you down. 10 a.m. at my office? Neutral location. Same coffee shop. 10 a.m. See you there. I spent the rest of the day preparing. I created a detailed timeline of what I expected. Week 1. Initial investigation and employee interviews. Week 2, determination of wrongdoing and responsible parties. Week 3, corrective action plan. Week 4, implementation and documentation. If Victoria was serious, she'd meet every deadline. If she was stalling, I'd know within the first 2 weeks. Victoria showed up at Blue Bottle at 9:55 a.m. with a leather portfolio and an expression that suggested she hadn't slept much either. She ordered us both coffee, remembered I took mine black, and sat down. I spent all day yesterday and last night reviewing every employee file, every termination record, every complaint that's been filed in the last 18 months, she said, opening her portfolio. It's worse than I thought. She slid a document across the table. It was a spreadsheet listing every employee terminated or who quit under Marcus's management. 18 people in 18 months. 14 of them were minorities. The pattern was unmistakable. I also pulled the hiring records. Of the 23 people hired to replace those who left, 21 are white. The 2 who aren't were hired before Marcus had approval authority. She looked up at me, and I saw genuine anger in her eyes. My father built this company from nothing. He specifically made it a priority to hire diverse teams because he's an immigrant who faced discrimination. Marcus destroyed that in a year and a half. Does your father know? He knows there's been turnover. He didn't know the demographics. He trusted Marcus to handle regional operations while he focused on expansion. That trust was clearly misplaced. What about the discriminatory write-ups? The targeting? She pulled out another document. I've identified 7 employees who were written up for things that other employees did without consequence. I've pulled the documentation. It's damning. I scanned the papers. She wasn't lying. It was all there, laid out in black and white, the evidence of Marcus's systematic discrimination. What are you going to do about it? I asked. First, I'm bringing in an outside employment attorney to review everything and make recommendations. Second, I'm personally reaching out to every wrongfully terminated employee to apologize and offer reinstatement with back pay. Third, she paused. Third, Marcus is being removed from his position effective immediately. I looked up sharply. You're firing your husband? I'm reassigning him to a non-management position where he can't hurt anyone else's career. My father agreed this morning. Her jaw was tight. Turns out, when you present your father with evidence that his son-in-law has been destroying his legacy, he stops being so welcoming. How did Marcus take it? Badly. He's furious. He thinks I'm betraying him to protect you. She met my eyes. He doesn't understand that this isn't about you. This is about doing the right thing. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt a small crack in the wall of anger I'd built. Victoria wasn't Marcus. She wasn't my parents. She'd seen the evidence and made a choice, the hard choice, the right choice. I need all of this documented, I said. Employment attorney's name and credentials, timeline of corrective actions, copies of all reinstatement offers, proof that Marcus has been reassigned. You'll have everything. I'm treating you like an auditor. Full transparency. She paused. I meant what I said yesterday. You deserved better. From all of us. Over the next 4 weeks, Victoria kept every single promise. Week 1. She hired Sarah Michaels, a prominent employment attorney from New York, to conduct an independent investigation. Sarah interviewed current and former employees, reviewed all documentation, and compiled a 47-page report confirming systematic discrimination under Marcus's management. Week 2. Victoria personally called all 8 employees who'd spoken to me, plus 6 others who'd been wrongfully terminated. She apologized, offered reinstatement with full back pay and restored seniority, and offered additional compensation for emotional distress. 7 of the 14 accepted. The others had moved on but appreciated the acknowledgement. Week 3. Hartford Automotive implemented new policies, mandatory diversity training for all management, an independent HR oversight committee, a confidential reporting system for discrimination complaints, and quarterly diversity audits. Week 4. Marcus was formally reassigned to a sales associate position at a single location with no management duties. His regional manager title was eliminated, and the territory was divided among 3 experienced GMs. An internal memo was sent to all employees announcing the restructuring and apologizing for management failures that did not reflect the company's values. Victoria documented everything and sent it to me in weekly reports. She also included something I hadn't expected, recordings of her conversations with Marcus. You're destroying my career for her? Marcus's voice said on one recording. Your psycho sister-in-law who's so jealous she's trying to ruin us. She's not trying to ruin us, Marcus. She's holding you accountable for ruining other people's careers. There's a difference. I didn't do anything wrong. Those employees weren't performing. Stop. I've seen the evidence. I've read Sarah's report. You systematically targeted minority employees. You wrote them up for things you ignored when white employees did them. You created a hostile work environment, and when I look at who you hired to replace them, it's pretty clear you had a type, and it wasn't based on qualifications. So what? You're just going to believe a bunch of disgruntled ex-employees over your own husband? I'm believing the documentation, Marcus. I'm believing the pattern. I'm believing the data. And yes, I'm believing your sister, who has never done anything except try to have a relationship with a family that treated her like garbage. There was a long pause on the recording. Then Marcus said, "I want a divorce." "I thought you might. My lawyer will send papers next week." The recording ended. I sat in my apartment, listening to that conversation 3 times. Victoria was leaving Marcus. She was blowing up her own life to do the right thing. On February 1st, exactly 1 month after Victoria and I had met, I sat in Patricia's office with all the documentation spread across her desk. "So what do you want to do?" Patricia asked. "We have 2 stories here. The original expose about Marcus's discrimination, or the follow-up about a company that actually took responsibility and made changes." "I want to run both," I said. "Part 1 airs this week, the investigation, the discrimination, the pattern of behavior. Part 2 airs next week, Victoria's response, the corrective actions, the accountability. We show the problem and the solution. And your brother? We name him. We show exactly what he did and what consequences he faced. He doesn't get to hide behind the company's redemption arc." Patricia smiled. "Now that's the journalist I trained. Write it up. We'll run Part 1 Thursday, Part 2 the following Thursday." I called Victoria that afternoon. "The story runs Thursday. Both parts, what Marcus did and how you responded." "Thank you for waiting. Thank you for letting us try to fix it. Victoria, there's something I need to know. The divorce, is that real or is that for optics?" She was quiet for a moment. "It's real. I've spent the last month watching my husband refuse to take responsibility for hurting people. I've watched him blame you, blame the employees, blame everyone except himself. That's not who I want to be married to. That's not who I thought I married. I'm sorry. Don't be. You did me a favor. Better to know now than 10 years and 2 kids from now." She paused. "There's something else you should know. Your parents called me. They wanted me to convince you to kill the story. They offered to pay you." My stomach dropped. "They what?" "Your father offered $50,000 if you'd bury the investigation. When I told him you'd never accept that, he asked if I'd testify that the former employees were lying. He wanted me to help him sue you for defamation." I couldn't breathe. My own father, the attorney who'd taught me about integrity, about justice, had tried to bribe and then threaten his way out of accountability for his golden child. "What did you tell him?" "I told him if he went anywhere near you with threats or lawsuits, I'd testify on your behalf and provide every piece of evidence I'd gathered. I told him that you were the only person in this family who'd acted with integrity. And I told him that if Marcus had grown up with actual consequences instead of constant excuses, maybe he wouldn't have turned into someone who discriminates against employees and then laughs when called out." I started crying. I couldn't help it. This woman, who I'd never met before a month ago, who had every reason to protect her family's interests, was defending me to my own parents. "Victoria, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, just, after this airs, if you want to get coffee sometime as actual people instead of adversaries, I'd like that. I'd like to know my former sister-in-law. I'd like that too." The story aired on Thursday, February 6th at 6 p.m. 12 minutes of devastating evidence showing how Marcus Hartford had systematically discriminated against minority employees at his father-in-law's company, costing 14 people their jobs and destroying a company's carefully built reputation for diversity. We named Marcus. We showed his lack of qualifications. We featured interviews with David Chen and 3 other former employees detailing their experiences. We presented the data, the timeline, the pattern. My phone started ringing before the segment even ended. I turned it off. The next morning, the story had been picked up by state media outlets. By afternoon, national outlets were calling the station. By evening, De Hartford Automotive was trending on Twitter, and the company's Yelp page was flooded with 1-star reviews. The following Thursday, we aired Part 2. Victoria's response, the internal investigation, the corrective actions, the accountability. We showed a company that had acknowledged wrongdoing and taken real steps to fix it. We interviewed Sarah Michaels, the employment attorney. We featured 2 employees who'd been reinstated and spoke about the company's commitment to change. We also reported on Marcus's reassignment and Victoria's decision to divorce him. The response was overwhelmingly positive. People wanted to see companies take responsibility. They wanted to see consequences for discrimination. They wanted to see that change was possible. We won a regional Edward R. Murrow Award 3 months later for the series. My parents called 47 times in the week after the first story aired. I didn't answer. They sent emails. They sent texts. They even sent my Aunt Carol to my apartment to talk some sense into me. I told Aunt Carol that I'd talk to my parents when they were ready to have an honest conversation about their behavior. Not Marcus's. She left confused. Finally, 3 weeks after the story aired, my mother showed up at my apartment. I almost didn't let her in. "Please," she said through the door. "Just 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I opened the door. She looked terrible, like she'd aged 5 years and 3 weeks. Her eyes were red, her hair was limp, and she was wearing sweatpants. My mother, who'd never left the house without makeup and pressed clothes. "I'm sorry," she said immediately. "I'm so sorry." "For what specifically?" "For the wedding. For not standing up for you. For spending your whole life making you feel invisible while we catered to Marcus. For trying to bribe you to kill the story. For all of it." I gestured to the couch. We sat. "Marcus won't speak to us," Mom said quietly. "He blames us for not protecting him from you. Your father and I have been going to therapy, couples therapy and individual. Our therapist asked us to list all your accomplishments." "We couldn't." Her voice cracked. "Our therapist had to look you up online to show us. The Emmy, the promotions, the stories you've broken. We knew none of it. And that destroyed me, Amber. Realizing we'd been so focused on Marcus that we'd completely neglected our daughter." "Why?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Why was I never enough? What did I do wrong?" "Nothing." "God, Amber, nothing. You were perfect. You were easy. You didn't need us the way Marcus did, or so we thought. He struggled in school, struggled socially, struggled with everything. So we focused on him. We told ourselves you were fine, you were independent, you didn't need as much attention. But that was just an excuse. We were lazy. We took the easy path with you and the hard path with Marcus, and in doing so, we failed you both. We turned him into an entitled man-child who can't handle consequences, and we turned you into someone who doesn't trust that she's loved." Tears were streaming down both our faces now. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to do better. To actually be your mother instead of just the woman who gave birth to you." "What about Dad?" "He wants to talk to you too. He's having a harder time. His whole identity is wrapped up in Marcus. Losing Marcus's respect has broken something in him. He's not ready to admit his part in this yet. But he's trying. And Marcus?" Mom's face hardened slightly. "Marcus is living in a studio apartment working as a car salesman and blaming everyone but himself. Victoria's divorce proceedings are moving forward. Your father and we've had to accept that we raised a son who lacks basic empathy. That's on us." We sat in silence for a long moment. "I need time," I finally said. "I need to process this, but maybe we could have coffee in a few weeks, just us. And you can tell me about your life, and I'll tell you about mine, and we'll see if there's anything to rebuild." Mom nodded, wiping her eyes. "I'd like that. I'd really like that." She stood to leave, then turned back. "Your Emmy, the one for the housing discrimination series." I looked it up. "I watched the whole thing. Amber, it was incredible. You're incredible. And I'm so proud of you. I know I have no right to say that now, but it's true." After she left, I sat on my couch and cried for an hour. Not sad tears. Not angry tears. Cleansing tears. Release tears. 2 months later, Victoria and I met for coffee. It was awkward at first. We'd been through something intense together, but we didn't really know each other. "How are you doing?" I asked. "Honestly? Better than I expected. The divorce is almost finalized. I'm running the Hartford Automotive Diversity Initiative now, and it's actually fulfilling. And I'm in therapy, trying to figure out why I married someone like Marcus in the first place. Any conclusions? Apparently, I have a pattern of choosing men who need fixing instead of men who are actual partners. Classic overachiever trying to prove her worth through others' success. Very cliché, very embarrassing, I laughed. Join the club. I spent 28 years trying to prove my worth to people who were never going to see it. So what now? For you? I'm taking a job in New York. Lead investigative producer at a national network affiliate. It's a huge opportunity. Amber, that's amazing. Congratulations. Thanks. I'm terrified and excited. I paused. My mom and I are having dinner once a month. It's still awkward, but we're trying. Dad and I exchanged emails. He's not ready to actually talk yet, but it's progress. And Marcus? Marcus sent me a message through Mom asking if I was happy now that I'd ruined his life. I took a sip of coffee. I didn't respond. His life isn't my responsibility. It never was, Victoria smiled. You know what's funny? I think you and I could have been friends. If we'd met under literally any other circumstances, we still can be. If you're willing to be friends with the woman who exposed your ex-husband on television, are you kidding? You're the only person who told me the truth when everyone else was protecting comfortable lies. I'll take that friendship. We clinked our coffee cups together. 6 months after the story aired, I was packing up my Boston apartment for the move to New York when my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Amber? This is David Chen. I don't know if you remember me. Of course I remember you. How are you? I'm good. Really good, actually. I took the reinstatement offer from Hartford Automotive, and it's been completely different. New management, actual accountability, real diversity training. It feels like a different company. I'm glad. You deserved that. I'm calling because I wanted you to know, the 7 of us who came back, we nominated you for a Community Impact Award through the NAACP for using your platform to expose discrimination and hold people accountable. I thought you should know before it's announced next week. I sat down heavily on a moving box. David, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. You gave us our careers back. You gave us our dignity back. That matters. After we hung up, I sat in my half-packed apartment and thought about the last year. About the wedding invitation that never came. About Marcus's laugh. Ha ha, we forgot to invite you. About the choice I'd made to stop begging for love from people who'd never valued me. About how that choice had led to exposing discrimination, holding power accountable, helping people get their jobs back, and ultimately finding my own worth. They thought forgetting to invite me would break me. They thought I'd just accept being invisible forever. They had no idea how much they'd regret it. But here's the thing I'd learned. The best revenge isn't destruction. It's not making them suffer. It's not even forcing them to acknowledge what they did wrong. The best revenge is becoming so completely, unapologetically yourself that their opinion stops mattering. It's building a life so full and meaningful that their absence becomes irrelevant. It's realizing that you don't need their love because you've finally learned to love yourself. The Community Impact Award ceremony was in Hartford, which meant I had to go home. Mom asked if she could attend. I said yes. I wore a navy blue dress that I'd bought specifically for the occasion, not too fancy, not too casual, perfectly professional. When they called my name and I walked onto that stage to accept the award, I saw Mom in the 3rd row, crying and clapping. I saw Victoria, too, sitting next to her, also clapping. I saw Aunt Carol and Uncle Jim. I saw David Chen and 3 other former Hartford Automotive employees who'd come to support me. I saw Patricia, who'd driven down from Boston, and in the back row, looking uncomfortable and out of place, I saw my father. After the ceremony, people swarmed me with congratulations. When the crowd finally cleared, Dad approached hesitantly. "Can we talk?" he asked. We stepped outside into the warm June evening. "You were right," he said without preamble. "About all of it, Marcus, our parenting, the favoritism. I spent 6 months in therapy trying to avoid admitting it, but you were right. Okay, I made Marcus my whole identity. His success was my success. His failures were my failures. And in doing that, I completely neglected you. I told myself you didn't need me because acknowledging that you needed me and I wasn't there was too painful. He looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. I failed you, Amber, as a father, as a parent, as a decent human being, and I'm sorry, I wanted to stay angry. Part of me wanted to make him suffer the way he'd made me suffer for 28 years. But I was tired of anger. I was tired of hurt. I was tired of waiting for them to fix me when I'd already fixed myself. I appreciate you saying that, I said carefully. But I need you to understand. Sorry doesn't erase 28 years. Sorry doesn't give me back the childhood where I felt seen and valued. Sorry doesn't undo the wedding I wasn't invited to. I know. I'm willing to try to have a relationship with you. But it has to be different. You have to actually show up. You have to actually see me. Not who you want me to be, not who's convenient for you to see, but who I actually am. I'm watching your investigative series. The one you're producing in New York. I've watched every episode twice. Your mother and I watched together. He smiled slightly. You're brilliant, Amber. You're everything I wished Marcus could be. Driven, ethical, talented, successful. And you did it all without any help from me. I'm so proud of you. And I'm so ashamed that it took me this long to tell you. I don't need you to be proud of me, Dad. I'm proud of me. But I wouldn't mind having a father who actually acts like one. Can I try? I thought about it. Really thought about it. About whether I wanted this man, who'd failed me so spectacularly, to have access to my life. Yes, I finally said. You can try. But this is your last chance. You don't get to blow this and then show up again in another year with more apologies. This is it. I understand. That night I had dinner with Mom, Dad, Victoria, and Aunt Carol. It was stilted. At first, none of us quite knew how to be a family. When the family structure had been so thoroughly demolished and rebuilt. But then Victoria told a funny story about her divorce attorney accidentally sending her an email meant for another client about a contested parrot. And we all started laughing. And for a moment, it felt almost normal. What about Marcus? I finally asked. The question had been hanging over the table all evening. Mom and Dad exchanged a look. He's in California, Mom said. He got a sales job at a Toyota dealership. He's still angry. Still blames everyone else. Still refuses therapy. We talk to him once a month, but it's not a real relationship. Do you miss him? I asked. The version of him you thought he was? Every day, Dad admitted. But we're trying to accept that we can't fix him. He has to want to fix himself. And right now he doesn't. I'm sorry, I said, surprising myself by meaning it. Don't be, Mom said firmly. You didn't do this to him. His choices did this to him. You just held him accountable. That's not cruelty. That's consequences. 3 years have passed since the wedding I wasn't invited to. 3 years since Marcus laughed and said, "Ha, we forgot to invite you." Here's what's happened in those 3 years. I'm now a senior investigative producer at a national network in New York. I've won 2 more Emmys. I've broken stories about corporate fraud, environmental violations, and political corruption. My work matters. I matter. Victoria and I are genuinely friends. We get brunch once a month when she visits New York for business. She's engaged to someone new, a nonprofit director who treats her like an actual partner. She's happy. Mom and I have dinner every time I visit Connecticut, which is about once every 6 weeks. We talk about real things now. My work, her real estate career, books we're reading, therapy revelations. It's not perfect, but it's real. Dad and I text every week. He sends me articles he thinks I'd find interesting for investigations. He watches every segment I produce. He flew to New York to see my apartment and took me to dinner at an expensive restaurant where he told me stories about his own career failures that he'd never shared before. We're building something, slowly. Marcus is still in California. Still selling cars. Still alone. Still angry. I heard through Mom that he got engaged briefly last year, but it fell apart when his fiancée discovered he'd lied about his work history. Some people never learn. I don't think about him much anymore. Sometimes I'll see something that reminds me of childhood, a soccer game, a particular song, and I'll feel a pang of sadness for what we could have been as siblings. But mostly I feel nothing. He's a stranger who happens to share my DNA. The truth is, that wedding invitation, or lack thereof, was the best thing that ever happened to me. It shattered the illusion that I could earn their love through achievement. It freed me from the exhausting cycle of trying to be seen by people who were determined not to see me. It forced me to see myself, to value myself, to build a life based on my own standards rather than their approval. Last week I got an email. Subject line, invitation. My heart jumped before I even opened it. After 3 years, was Marcus getting married again? Was this some kind of sick test? I clicked it open. It was from Mom. Amber, your father and I are renewing our vows for our 35th anniversary. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. We know this might be complicated given everything, but we'd love for you to be there. No pressure. We understand if you'd rather not. But you're invited. You've always been invited, even when we were too blind to show you. Love, Mom. I stared at the email for a long time. 3 years ago, I would have analyzed this from every angle. I would have questioned their motives, looked for hidden meanings, protected myself from inevitable disappointment. Now? Now I just asked myself what I wanted. Did I want to go to my parents' vow renewal? Did I want to be part of this family, imperfect and damaged as it was? I thought about the dinners with Mom where she actually asked about my life, about the texts from Dad sharing articles, about Victoria's friendship, about the slow, painful, genuine work of rebuilding something that had been broken for so long. I thought about who I'd become in the last 3 years. Someone who didn't need their validation, but could accept their effort. Someone who'd learned the difference between being loved and being valued. Someone who knew her worth. I hit reply, I'll be there. Thank you for inviting me. 3 words that wouldn't have mattered 3 years ago. 3 words that meant everything now. Because this time I wasn't going because I needed to be there. I was going because I chose to be there. And that made all the difference. The vow renewal was beautiful. Small and intimate, held in the backyard of a friend's house overlooking the Connecticut River. Maybe 40 people total. Victoria came as my +1, which raised some eyebrows, but we didn't care. Mom asked me to do a reading, Mary Oliver's The Summer Day. When I got to the line, tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? I looked at my parents and saw them both crying. At the reception, Dad pulled me aside. Your mother and I wrote new vows, he said. We didn't just renew the old ones. We wrote new ones that reflected who we actually are now, not who we were 35 years ago. I wanted you to know that one of my vows was about you. What did you say? I vowed to be the father to our daughter that I should have been all along. I vowed to see her, to celebrate her, to show up for her the way I failed to before. I vowed to never take her for granted again. He paused. You didn't hear it during the ceremony because I added it at the last minute. But I meant it, every word. I hugged him then, and I felt him shake with sobs against my shoulder. I forgive you, I whispered. I'm not sure when it happened, but I do. I forgive you. That night, back in my hotel room, I got a text from an unknown California number. I heard you went to their vow renewal. I wasn't invited. Guess now you know how it feels. Marcus, still keeping score, still missing the point. I stared at the message for a moment, then deleted it without responding. He wanted me to feel guilty. He wanted me to feel the pain he'd felt when I exposed his discrimination. He wanted me to understand how it felt to be excluded. But I'd always known how it felt to be excluded. I'd lived it for 28 years. The difference was, I'd used that pain to become someone better. Someone who stood up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves. Someone who held powerful people accountable. Someone who built a life of meaning and purpose. Marcus had used his exclusion, his consequences, to become even smaller, even more bitter, even more alone. We'd both been given a choice about who to become in the face of pain. I chose growth. He chose resentment. And that, more than any revenge I could have planned, more than any story I could have aired, more than any consequence I could have imposed, was the real difference between us. I'm writing this from my apartment in New York on a Sunday morning. The sun is streaming through my windows. I have coffee brewing and a work project I'm excited about spread across my dining table. In an hour, I'm meeting a friend for brunch. Tonight, I have a date with someone who makes me laugh and who actually shows up when he says he will. My life is full. My life is mine. My life is everything I built when I stopped waiting for people to see me and started seeing myself. Sometimes, I think about that moment, standing in my Boston apartment, phone in hand, staring at wedding photos from an event I wasn't invited to. That moment when everything broke. That moment when Marcus laughed and said, "We forgot to invite you." They thought it would break me. They thought I'd accept my invisibility. They thought there would be no consequences for treating me like I didn't matter. They were wrong about all of it, because being forgotten by them taught me the most important lesson of my life. The only person who needs to remember me, the only person who needs to see me, the only person whose validation actually matters, is me. And I will never forget myself again. Marcus laughed when he said they forgot to invite me. He thought it was funny. He thought it didn't matter. He had no idea how much he'd regret it. But here's the truth. I don't need his regret. I don't need his apology. I don't need him to understand what he did wrong. I needed to understand what I deserved. And now I do. So Marcus, if you somehow see this, thank you. Thank you for forgetting to invite me. Thank you for laughing about it. Thank you for showing me exactly who you were so I could finally become exactly who I am. You wanted to make me invisible. Instead, you set me free, and I've never been more visible in my life. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been the forgotten one, the invisible one, the one who had to fight to be seen, I hope you know this. Your worth isn't determined by the people who can't see it. Your value isn't diminished by the family who doesn't recognize it. And your story doesn't end when people write you out of theirs. You get to write your own ending. Make it a good one. Thank you for following Amber's journey. If you found strength in her story, hit that like button, subscribe for more stories about resilience and redemption, and drop a comment sharing your own experience. You're not alone, none of us are.